D&D number 4, Weeds Grow in Jesus' Name. Chapter 4. Ricky peeled away in the silver 911 Carrera Cabriolet. To me, he said to Steve, "What do you got?" Nicholas A. James, former New York cop, retired early due to a gunshot wound that caused deafness in his left ear. Bree's manager hired him through Starpoint Security. Police records show several reprimands for excessive force and conduct unbecoming. Age? 32. Address? Well, that's where it gets weird. I can't find a listed address here in California. Last known is 16 Charles Street, New York, New York. Well, keep digging. You got it. Meet me at the Sunset. I'm on my way. Ricky ended the call. Ricky smiled as he headed toward the Sunset Club, a regular haunt of his and Steve's. It had just the right amount of class and raunch. He was feeling pretty good since his little scene with Bree. She admitted to wanting him, and it was a start. Of course, sex isn't what he's after. He wants her. He loves her, and he wants her to love him. One step at a time, he thought, the first being getting her to stop thinking of him as her brother. Their little chat accomplished that, he hoped, and later tonight, after he took care of some business, he intended to go home and make sure she wasn't falling back into any old ideas. "Call Jason," he said. "Hello, Rick," Jason said. "Out and about?" "On my way to the Sunset, just letting someone know in case." Jason was silent for a few moments. "In case? What are you up to, Rick?" "I'm looking for someone." "For Nick James, by any chance? You got anything for me?" "Former New York cop. He likes to slap people around." "Yeah, I got that. I need a California address." "Can't help you there. We have to wait for him to surface." "Right. Okay. Well, want to join Steve and I for drinks?" "I'm a little busy tonight. Why are you calling me and not talking to Eric?" Ricky grimaced. "Dad seems a little, I don't know, preoccupied." "Yeah, Justin told me what he heard at dinner the other night." "I don't understand," Ricky said. "Me neither, but keep your eyes and ears open." "Trying to. Anyway, you've got my last known communication. Be careful, Rick, and don't be stupid." New scene. "I'm telling you, he's already saying stuff, like cutting her down and insulting her cooking, stuff like that." "No, only toward her. Those subliminals are working. It's crazy." "What kind of stuff is on there?" "Oh, man, that is so wrong. I mean, she's not lazy, and she definitely wouldn't ever look at another man." "No, I'm not getting soft. It's just that, well, she's okay. "Yes, I know. I'll keep that in mind." "Not much else right now. Brianna is home. And the younger brother, Joey, he's been warned about fighting at school." "Hello," Bree said as she entered the kitchen. Beth whirled around. "I'll call you later. Okay, bye." She ended her call and eyed Bree, wondering how much she'd heard. "I'm Bree said, extending a hand to the strange girl. "I'm Beth. I'm a friend of your mom." Bree looked around. "Well, where is Mom?" Beth shrugged. I guess she's in bed." "Oh, then you're staying with us?" "Yeah. I just came down to get something to eat. I hope that's okay." Bree motioned toward the refrigerator. "Help yourself." "Yeah, thanks." Beth rummaged through the fridge and grabbed an apple. "How long have you known my mother?" "Almost 3 weeks now. She's real nice." "Uh-huh. Where's your family?" "I haven't got any family." "So who were you talking to?" Um, Ex-boyfriend. We're like friends now." "That's good," Bree said as she poured herself a glass of milk. "You know what they say, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer." "Yeah, well, I guess I'll be going back up to bed." "Okay, well, nice to meet you. You too. Night." Bree let the false smile fade from her lips. Her brow furrowed as she made herself something to eat. Strange girl. Her mom must be working on another project. Bree wasn't so sure if she approved of this one. The one-sided conversation she'd heard was strange, to say the least. What did she say about someone not looking at another man? And who was she telling about Joey getting into fights, as if it were anyone's business? This girl was at least nosy, and at worst, some sort of media spy. She'd better not be trying to sell stories about our family. Bree grabbed meat and cheese and bread and mayo and began making a sandwich. She was starved. Sighing, she thought about Ricky and the things he'd said to her earlier. It was like opening a floodgate of emotions, and she had no idea how to stop them. She shook her head slowly as she cut tomatoes. She admitted to him that she wanted him. Darn it. Why was she so weak? He'd held her too close. He'd smelled too good, and his power vibrated through her. It felt good. Really good. She'd said she wanted him, and then, instead of taking her to bed, he'd been so tender. He'd tucked her into bed and kissed her good night. She didn't know what to think about that. She had awakened hungry in more ways than one, but now that she had a little distance, she wondered if she should take it back, chalk it up to a moment of weakness. He wasn't home now, but he'd be back sooner or later, and what was she going to do? New scene. That's Ricky Kino. The young man swung his camera up and started across the street. His veteran buddy grabbed him by the back of his shirt. Hold up, buddy. He tried to pull away. Why? Listen, what'd you say your name is? Brad? Listen, Brad, we don't mess with him. Why not? He's right there. Let go of me. Another photographer laughed. We sort of have this deal. We leave him alone, and he lets us live. What? Okay, well, yes, I'm exaggerating. Still, we don't mess with the Kinos. That's bull, man. It's a free country. He's walking on a public street. You'd think I wouldn't have to tell you guys this. Both of you have been to court to defend our rights. Yeah, well, you want to take a chance? Go ahead. Don't say I didn't warn you. The strip was in full swing, and Ricky and Steve had decided to stroll and put out some feelers for Nick James before they settled down for a few drinks at the Sunset Club. So far, they hadn't had any luck. Ricky turned when someone called his name, and a camera flashed in his face. Ricky nodded and waved and kept walking. Hey, Rick, did you hear what happened to Brianna? Rick stopped. The words came from the guy who'd just taken his picture. Heard some guy roughed her up pretty bad. Got anything to say about it? Ricky shook his head and continued on. The man got in front of Ricky to impede his progress, and Ricky walked around him. And when the same man jumped in front of Ricky again, he stopped. You're pushing your luck, Ricky said softly. Are you going to do something about the guy who roughed up your sister? Get out of my face. I got a right to be here just as much as you. Absolutely, you're correct, and I have a right to walk here without you impeding my way. Ricky stepped around the man and continued on. But the idiot ran past Ricky and Steve and stopped in front of them again. Ricky shook his head and held up a hand. Fair warning, man. Back off. You can't touch me, and we both know it, Brad said. Oh, but I can, Ricky said softly. And what's more, I will. I'll take you to court. I'll ruin your career. Ricky laughed. My career? You mean like making movies? You think me kicking your butt will hurt my career? It wouldn't. That's just the sort of thing the public loves. Still, let's say for a second that no one wants to see another one of my movies. You know what that means to me? Brad raised his eyebrows haughtily. What? Nada? I don't believe that. Besides, it'll be more than that. I'll send you to jail for assault. Ricky shrugged. Well, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. You're telling me you wouldn't mind spending 20 years in jail? Okay, you want a Zen lesson? I'll give you a freebie. The world as you see it is not the same one I see. We create our own reality, not just virtually, but here in this physical world. And I live in my own universe and in my own reality, and you can't touch me there. No one can. Hocus pocus, Brad said. Ricky looked at Steve, shrugged, and tried to step around, but the guy blocked him. Ricky leaned close and put his arm around the guy's shoulder and looked up and smiled for the other paparazzi who'd gathered around. Then he leaned his forehead against the side of the young guy's head. Let me see if I can help you to understand, Ricky said softly. If you mess with me, you'll lose. Brad stepped away and spoke loudly. Is that a threat? Are you threatening me? Ricky smiled for the cameras flashing away, scanning the crowd quickly for those taking video. There was plenty. He grinned. If the guy wanted to use media exposure, he was taking on a pro. Absolutely, and I'll say it again so everyone can hear. If you take me on, you'll lose. There's nothing you can do to me, not legally. Ricky shrugged and stepped back and raised his hands in the air as if pleading to an unseen deity. Why? He said loudly. Why, no matter where I go, people are always trying to pick fights with me. I swear it's like something from an old western where guys are always drawing on the gunfighter. I'm really tired of it, and this guy thinks he can take me on. I didn't say that, the guy challenged. No? Well, that's what it seemed like to me. Well, I want the whole world to know that I don't want to fight you. I simply want to be left alone. He sighed dramatically and shook his head. Please, please, no more challenges. I'm tired of defending myself. I will if I have to, but please, if you want to challenge me, let's not do it playing footsie on the street. I know. How about on the mats? You could meet me on the mats. Ricky's voice oozed with false enthusiasm and cheesy sincerity. The young guy backed away. You're crazy. I don't understand. You challenged me. I'm opening the door and giving you the opportunity. Now you change your mind? Ricky shrugged with a smile. It's probably for the best. You take care now. Ricky and Steve walked away as a young man looked after them. What the hell? Brad mumbled as one of his peers stepped up beside him. He just set you up, you idiot. You can't touch him now. It's on record that you tried to challenge him. That's not what happened, though. It's what I got on my camera. Brad looked around at all the others laughing at him. Yeah? Well, we'll just see about that. New scene. They sat with their backs to the wall, looking out over the crowd. Steve had a beer and Rick a Perrier. So, I think I caught you in a lie, Steve said jovially. I don't think so. You said that guy challenged you, and he really didn't. He didn't challenge me to fight, and I didn't say he did. He did, however, challenge me every single time he stepped in front of me, impeding my progress. Steve considered the statement and finally nodded. Okay, you win. Several ladies approaching at once had Steve grinning and Ricky moaning. Hi, gorgeous, one voluptuous blonde said, sitting down in the chair opposite Ricky. Hi yourself, Ricky answered. Buy me a drink. What would you like? Ricky asked as he nodded to the waitress. Whiskey sour, the young lady said. And I'll have a Red Bull and vodka, said the redhead who'd taken up with Steve. Ricky's eyebrows rose. It looked like his friend Steve would get lucky tonight. Ricky, on the other hand, had his luck waiting for him at home, and he couldn't wait to get back to her. They chatted with the women, talking about nothing of importance when Steve sat up straighter, and Ricky's senses came on full alert. His eyes scanned the crowd and stopped on a guy with dark brown hair that fell loosely over his forehead, wearing shades, black slacks, and an expensive sport coat. Black coat? Ricky asked. That's him. I don't like the setup here. I'm moving to the bar. You want me to come? No, he appears to be alone, but I wouldn't count on that. Be my eyes. You got it? And better alert the others. Of course. Ricky moved to the bar, leaving his back open. He'd have to trust Steve with that. This guy didn't stumble across the Sunset Club accidentally. He was here for a reason. Apparently the feelers they'd put out earlier reached the correct party. Ricky's skin began to tingle. Here goes. Good. The faster this is over, the faster he can get back to Bree. He caught sight of Nick James in the mirror as he approached. Rick lifted his glass, swallowed the contents, placed it down. Nick laid a hand on the counter next to Ricky, and Ricky looked up at him. I hear you're looking for me, Nick said, a wicked gleam in his eye. Ricky turned and looked him over. There was something familiar about the guy. Maybe it was simply because of the paper Steve had shown him. He had dark eyes, dark hair, big guy, maybe 6'4", at least 220. He had a scar on the left side of his face. Ricky stood. You're pretty sure of yourself, huh? Nick glanced around. Why do you say that? Ricky shrugged. You know who I am. You know I know what you did to Bree. You must know I'm looking to retaliate. You show up here alone. You come straight up to me. You get right in my face. I'd say you're either very confident or stupid or both. Nick smiled. I guarantee you I'm not stupid. That told Rick that Mr. James was not alone, and Ricky nodded and touched his eyebrow, and that was Steve's cue, as well as Ricky's other friends who stood nearby. Excuse me, ladies, Steve said as he rose. Rick moved so fast no one knew what happened. With blinding speed, his legs swept Nick's. One moment, the large man was standing there smiling at Ricky. The next, his legs were in the air, and the back of his head struck the floor. Somewhere in between, Ricky's elbow bashed into Nick's nose. At the same time, the three men who rushed forward were detained by Steve and a few others. Oh, man, are you okay? Ricky knelt over the guy, looked up, called the bartender. Do you think this guy is on something, JJ? He's fallen. Looks like something hit his face. You better call an ambulance. He's bleeding all over the place. A short time later, Ricky and Steve watched as Nicholas James, still disoriented, was loaded onto a gurney. Steve continued the argument. No, Rick, at least 5 seconds. You're slowing down. No way, bucko. 3. 3 seconds, maybe less. Steve rolled his eyes. You know what they say, pride goeth before a fall. Ricky grinned. The blonde moved in and latched onto Ricky's arm. Your place or mine, she offered. Sorry, Rick said. Thanks for the offer, but I have somewhere I have to be. He shook Steve's hand and within minutes was flying down the Pacific Highway, headed toward heaven. New scene. Bree stretched and turned over, pulling the comforter up over her shoulder. She couldn't get Ricky out of her mind. She'd done that successfully for 8 years, and suddenly her emotions were running rampant. No one had ever hit her, ever. Having that happen made her stop and think about what kind of guy she wanted in her life. She habitually went after the classic bad boy, though she didn't know why. Rick, on the other hand, was so very good. A gentleman, polite, classy, educated, and her eyes flew open. Ricky, you scared me. He lay beside her, face to face. Sorry. You know, it's pretty scary to think how easily someone could sneak in here while you're sleeping, and you'd never know it. Well, you're not just anyone. Well, now, that's good to hear. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close. Where did I leave off? Ricky, I've been thinking about what I said before. I was afraid of that. Are you trying to go back on the yes you gave me earlier? She sighed. Maybe. Please don't. For just a little while, don't think. Just feel. Just feel, Bree, with your heart. Let me show you how much I've missed you. He kissed her deeply and slowly. He sighed. You taste so good. Be honest, Bree. This feels right, doesn't it? It does to me. Does it to you? Be totally honest. She whimpered slightly. It does. God help me, but it does. He rose and covered her face with soft, feathery kisses. I've missed you, Bree. He wanted to tell her he loved her. However, that had been his mistake all those years ago. She'd run away from that. He wasn't sure why, but this time he would find the answers. He would understand her and figure out what made her tick. He would discover all her secrets. And if after all that she still doesn't love him back, then so be it. Look at me, Bree, he said softly. Open your eyes and look at me. Do you see me? I am not your brother. I'm a man. Ricky, she cried softly, I don't know what to think. He held her tight. Like I said earlier, don't be afraid. We'll figure this out. He meant to kiss her and hold her a minute and leave, but the comfort of being close to her was too alluring, and he fell asleep with the girl he loved in his arms. New scene. They woke at the soft knock on the door. It made Ricky glad he'd locked the door the night before. Bree, are you awake? Jeffy's tiny voice asked. Bree drew a sharp breath. Oh, no, Ricky. Go back to your room across the balcony. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. No way. He rose. We didn't do anything other than sleep. We have nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of. Ricky opened the door. Jeffy came bounding into the room and jumped onto the bed and into Bree's arms. Hi, Bree. I'm so glad you're home. I missed you so much. I was going to come up and see you last night, but Mom said you needed to rest. Wow. Look at your eye. Mom said a man hit you and you were pretty upset about it. It looks really bad. Does it hurt? Oh, hi, Ricky. Are you going to get the man who hurt Bree? Been there, done that, Ricky answered. What? Bree said, finally getting a word in edgewise. Ricky shrugged. I took care of business last night. Ricky, how could you do that without talking to me first? Well, it happened faster than I thought it would, not that there was anything to talk about. He showed up last night at the club I was at, and I took care of business. What did you do? I made him fall down. Last I saw him, they were taking him to the hospital. Who was? Paramedics. Good grief, Ricky. What if he presses charges? I don't think that's going to happen. How do you know? He shrugged. It's a man thing. Jeffy was jumping on the bed. Mom says we're having a family breakfast to celebrate you coming home, and I'm supposed to tell you that she's giving you fair warning to get up and dressed and then hurry down. Bree sighed with a smile. Mom and her family breakfast. Okay, I'll be down soon. You too, Ricky, Jeffy said, still jumping. Ricky sat down on the bed next to Bree. Jeffy, I have a question for you. Tell me what you think, okay? She jumped up high and landed on her bottom. Okay. Do you know that Bree and I are not really brother and sister? Yes, of course. Mark and Joey are brothers because they have the same mother and father, but they're not your brothers, not your real brothers. And Bree is their real sister, but not yours. But we are a family, one big happy family. That's right, Princess. And Bree and me, we're half sisters because her real mom is my mom, but her real dad is not my dad. And you're my half brother because my dad is your dad, but your mom is not my mom. Your mom is dead. She frowned. I'm sorry, Ricky, about your mom being dead. I know it was a long time ago, but does it still make you sad? He smiled at her. Sometimes. And now here's another question I want to ask, okay? Ricky, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, Bree said quickly. It's always right to talk about things and to let the truth be known. Daddy says we must learn to be honest with ourselves and everyone around us, Jeffy added. That's because Dad is a very smart man. What were you going to ask me, Ricky? How would it make you feel to know that Bree and I were like boyfriend and girlfriend? Her brow furrowed and her arms crossed as if she were deep in thought. Bree is your girlfriend? Yes. Do you kiss her? Oh, Lord, Bree uttered softly. Ricky grinned. Yes, I kiss her. Jeffy shrugged and turned to Bree. Is it okay with you? Bree looked up into Ricky's face, knowing he waited for the answer as much as Jeffy did. I don't know, Jeffy. Ricky frowned. Why don't you know? Jeffy asked. Don't you like Ricky? Well, yes, of course I do. He's real cute, and Daddy says he's a fine young man. Bree laughed. Yes, he is. And he likes you, right, Ricky? Yes, he said softly. Don't you like it when he kisses you? It's okay to kiss someone you love. Sometimes it's just someone you like, but I know there are different kinds of kissing. What's up with all this talk about kissing? When did you learn so much about kissing? Mommy and I have had a long talk about kissing because a boy at school kissed me once. What's this? Ricky asked. Jeffy looked down. Mom said I wasn't in trouble. She looked back up with a grin. And I told her not to worry about it because I liked it. Bree giggled. You did you? Yes, and Daddy said he didn't care if I liked it, that I'd better not kiss any more boys until I'm at least 30 years old. I bet he did, Ricky said, chuckling, and I agree with him. Jeffy frowned. Well, I don't think it's fair. Well, sometimes life isn't fair, Ricky said. Jeffy climbed over onto Bree's lap. So, are you going to be Ricky's girlfriend? I'm still trying to decide. Well, if I wasn't his sister, I would be his girlfriend, and you're really not his sister, so you're luckier than me. Yeah, I guess I am. Well, run on down, and I'll be there in a few minutes. Okay. We're having pancakes and bacon, and we hardly ever get bacon, so this is really special, even though it's just healthy bacon. Still, it tastes pretty good, and I'm starved, so hurry up. She jumped down off the bed and ran out the door. The moment Jeffy fled the room, Ricky grabbed Bree and pulled her up off the bed and into his arms. One hurdle gone, he said before he kissed her. Hey, Bree, welcome. Bree pushed away from Ricky. Hi, Joey, she said, her face turning red. Joey turned and started back down the hall the way he'd come, grabbing Mark as he went. What? Mark said, trying to shake Joey loose. I was just coming to say hi to Bree. Well, you'll have to wait your turn. Bree and Ricky are at it again. At what? It. Mark looked back over his shoulder. Really? That's interesting. Ricky smiled down at Bree. 2 more hurdles gone. She leaned her head against his chest. This is all happening too fast for me. I realize this might be hard for you, Ricky said, tilting her chin up. All I ask is that you try to just go with the flow for now. Don't fight it. You don't have to promote it either if you don't want to, but don't shut me out. Please. He kissed her softly. How's the eye feel? He asked. A little sore. I'm okay, really. He wrapped his strong arms around her and held her tight. I can't tell you how good it feels to just do this, to just hold you. It feels good to me too, Rick. I have to admit it feels right, sort of like coming home. But I just don't know how to feel about you. I can accept that, for now. We'd better get dressed and get down there. Bree took a long hot shower, dressed in capri pants and a cool sleeveless blouse, and headed downstairs. Ricky emerged from his room just as she passed his door. Good timing, he said, grabbing her by the elbow and pressing her against the wall. She didn't resist. She did look up at him with a grimace. I'm not used to this yet, Ricky. You live in the same house as me. You're my... Don't you even say it. He lowered his head and brushed his lips softly over hers. You smell good. She closed her eyes and let him kiss her. He smelled so masculine. He tasted so good. Good. His touch made her melt. She wanted him. How had she been able to put these feelings aside for so long, and now just standing near him made her ache inside? What had he done to her? He pulled away and smiled down at her. Come on, let's go down before we get in trouble. Ricky entered the kitchen with his usual flourish, greeting everyone with a sunny good morning and scooping Jeffy up. Jeffy, why are you giggling so much? He asked as he tickled her under her chin. Because you're tickling me, she said, trying to get away. I am not. How in the world can you say that? Mark, what do you think about that? He tossed the child into the air, and Mark caught her and began his own tickling. She screamed for him to stop. Stop what? Mark asked innocently. Stop tickling me, Jeffy cried. I don't know what you're talking about, Mark said. Do you know, Joey? He asked as he tossed her into the air. Joey caught her and swung her over his shoulder. No idea. He took one of her feet and began tickling it mercilessly. Daddy! Jeffy cried. Daddy, help me. Eric looked up from the batter he was stirring to smile at his daughter. Help you? Help you what? Jeffy could see she would get no help from that corner. Bree, help me. Oh, I'll help all right. She approached her and helped her by grabbing the other foot and starting in. Jeffy laughed uncontrollably. Help me, please help, she cried. Beth moved forward. I'll save you, sweetie, she said, reaching for her. She pulled Jeffy off Joey's shoulder and held her close. They all turned to watch Beth sit down with their sister and hold her on her lap. Jeffy cuddled up to the girl. I see we have a softy among us, Mark said, smiling at Beth. Ricky frowned, then pushed the uneasy feeling aside for the time being. He clapped his hands together. What can I do to help? You can set the... Shelley began before she was interrupted. Nothing, Eric said, raising his eyebrows at Shelley. Shelley can certainly handle things here. You go spend some time with your family. Ricky eyed his father, his brows drawing together. He glanced at Bree, who had an identical expression on her face, and then he looked toward Beth. She was smiling. Ricky got the distinct feeling she was enjoying his father's rude treatment of Shelley. Beth's eyes met his, and she raised her chin in her normal, haughty expression. Bree moved to her mother's side. I'd like to help, Mom. She glanced at Eric with a haughty stare of her own. Shelley looked worriedly over at Eric before she responded. Her voice, though, was quiet and halting. Okay, if you really want to. You can help set the table. Sure. Ricky watched the scene, becoming increasingly worried. His father wasn't himself. What in the heck was going on? His father was completely in love with Shelley. Usually he worshipped the ground she walked on. Ricky intended to have a word with him. As much as he dreaded it, it was better to take the bull by the horns. Shelley having to blink back tears at what should be a happy homecoming for Bree was extremely disturbing, at the very least. The family chatted over breakfast. Of course, everyone wanted to know the story behind Bree's shiner. Ricky was quiet, watching the group interact. His eyes kept moving toward Beth, who, again, seemed almost pleased about the way Nicholas James had roughed up Bree. Well, he certainly deserved what he got last night then, didn't he? Eric said. Ricky's eyebrows rose. How'd you know? Justin called me this morning. What's going on? Shelley asked. If you'll be quiet, I was about to tell you. Mark and Joey looked at each other, and Ricky and Bree did the same. Of course, Eric. Go on, I didn't mean to interrupt, Shelley said, her voice quivering. Ricky looked hard into his father's eyes. His father seemed oblivious to everyone's discomfort, yet he did stop and draw 2 long breaths before he went on, like someone who was trying to control their temper. It seems Bree's ex-boyfriend collapsed at the Sunset Club last night. Apparently, Ricky was standing right next to him when it happened and had the bartender call 911. They had to transport the guy to the hospital. He had a concussion. They said he must have hit his head pretty hard when he fell. You have anything you want to say about that, Rick? Ricky shrugged. Stuff happens. Jeffy giggled, and she straightened up when Eric raised a brow at her. He turned his gaze back on Ricky. Yes, it does, especially when there is a catalyst, and I believe you are that catalyst. Do you think what he did to Bree, to one of ours, should go unanswered? I know you're going to say we should follow the right channels, but Bree didn't want to go through all the publicity of having to press charges. For her sake, something had to be done. For her sake, Rick, or for yours? I realize it sounds like I was just indulging my need for vengeance, but I swear I was thinking of Bree. I mean, we all understand her not wanting to press charges, yet that means she'd have to think of him walking around with a smirk on his face, knowing he'd roughed her up with no consequences. There had to be consequences, Dad. The world needs to know that you don't get away with smacking around Brianna Adams. Eric nodded. Perhaps. Justin also told me to make sure I read the rest of this morning's paper, which I did. He addressed the table at large. A paparazzo challenged Ricky last night, and Ricky asked him to step into the ring with him. The man backed off. No shortage of pictures in the paper and video on the morning news. Eric looked up at his son. It appears you were quite busy last night. Ricky grinned as Bree's face turned red. And that is the end of chapter 4.